with parents like these. Mothers who have kids, then decide they don't want to be around them.
I don't have to get them to brush their teeth. I don't have to be up until 11:30 to do their homework. I don't miss that.
But what do their children miss?
Do you love your children?
More than anything.
More than yourself?
Should a mother love her children more than herself?
Moms moving out. Plus, mothers and daughters fighting it out. This teenager wants to have her baby. She says her parents want her not to.
You had talked about trying to slip her some kind of an abortion pill.
It was more of a joking type thing.
A showdown that leads to court.
He said, "Our daughter is suing us."
The war at home. Mortified by mom in a two-piece? Dad in silly shorts? You ain't seen nothing yet.
My life revolves around her boobs.
The ones her mother keeps implanting.
And this kid says, "Your mom has big boobs." It's so weird and awkward.
I'm not going to change this part of me. Can't live my life trying to please you.
Mother of the Year? And dads, we didn't forget you. Just in time for Father's Day. Leaving your child alone in a stroller in the splash zone at SeaWorld?
If you're that stupid, I want you caught on tape.
Child's Play. Tonight with parents like these.
Don't our parents always embarrass us?
Not like that. Here's Elizabeth Vargas and David Muir.
Good evening. They were harsh words. I hope she rots in hell. But those are the words from a daughter whose mother just resurfaced after intentionally disappearing, leaving her daughter for more than a decade. And it made us wonder, with parents like these.
David, most people think it's the greatest taboo of motherhood, voluntarily leaving your children, taking a time out that can stretch into years. But the moms I met are convinced that what they have done is making them even better mothers. You take a look and decide. Mother of the Year she isn't. 11 years ago, Brenda Heist dropped off her 8- and 12-year-old children at school and then vanished. In news reports, her grieving family said they assumed she'd been kidnapped or murdered.
It was tough. I mean, every prom, my brother graduated from high school and college. I graduated, and she wasn't there.
But last month, Heist finally reappeared, looking worse for wear, and made a stunning admission. She had abandoned her family on purpose. It's the rare extreme of a mom gone AWOL. The reaction? Widespread revulsion. Don't judge, says Mom Talia Liera. She's no Brenda Heist, not even close, but she's faced similar scorn for deciding to live apart from her children.
I had a lot of shame because of the way that we think about what mothers should be.
That they would never leave their children.
Some people think that.
Talia is a so-called non-custodial mother, a mom without physical custody of her kids. In 2008, she moved to Seattle after a divorce, leaving her 3 children, Nathaniel, Eric, and Serena, to live with their dad, David, 2,800 miles away in Pennsylvania. Talia spends her days painting, writing, making music, and practicing martial arts with her boyfriend. Mothering?
Hey, give me a wide shot of your room. I just want to see what it looks like.
Well, that's done from afar.
And I will walk you through the steps of the scrambled eggs. And the...
Oh, sure. She emails recipes for them to cook for themselves.
Pancakes.
And she stays in touch on phone and via Skype.
You sound a little like you have a cold.
Yeah, I have a cold.
But they only see each other in person around once a year.
Okay, well, Miss Sweet Cake, I will talk to you again soon.
Bye.
We talk all the time. We're very connected.
And that's as good as being there.
I can't answer that it's as good as. It's just different.
I know a lot of people listening to this will want to know, do you love your children?
Absolutely. More than anything.
More than yourself?
Should a mother love her children more than herself?
Startling as this may sound, there are an estimated 2.4 million non-custodial mothers in the United States. Many of these mothers are heartbroken by the loss of custody. But some moms, like Talia, give up custody voluntarily. Author Rana Reiko is also a non-custodial mother. Her teenage sons were 3 and 5 when she and her husband divorced. Since then, she sees them for 4 to 5 hours, 3 days a week, an arrangement she initiated.
They come over after school, they stay until bedtime, and then he comes to pick them up and they go home to bed.
Rana is brutally honest about why she made her decision.
I never wanted to be a mother initially. I realized that I had that I had kind of fallen into this role that I had never intended to fall into.
Rana wanted to devote herself full-time to her writing, not to her children. She is the rare mom to admit that she does not pine for the daily grind of parenting.
I don't have to get them to brush their teeth. I don't have to be up until 11:30 to do their homework. I don't miss that.
Talia has a different reason for leaving. She says post-divorce conflict between her and David was causing enormous stress for her and the kids, and that leaving, while a wrenching decision, was the only way to ease the tension.
Why so far away? Why did you have to move 3,000 miles away?
At that point, was it 10 miles or 3,000 miles or 3 million miles? It really wouldn't make any difference.
Well, because at 10 miles you could still see the kids and be a presence in their lives.
Right, but in order for the conflict to go away, there had to be a certain distance.
David says there was no conflict, and he says Talia's sudden transformation from stay-at-home mom to West Coast bohemian was astonishing.
I'm completely surprised even to this day.
And his friends?
They were shocked. It's like, how could a mom leave her children like this? What got into her? Hello. But she has a spiritual connection with them.
See, I could just like pet you.
That is rather profound, and accordingly, she doesn't seem to need to have that physical contact with them.
How's my boy?
Complicating matters further, Talia's youngest child, Eric, has Down syndrome. Their longest time apart was more than 2 years. Kisses with mom? Well, a computer will have to do.
You have a special needs child. Did it make you think that you owed it to him to be there for him?
Eric is the kind of child that connects to whomever he's around. It sounds strange to say this from his mother, but people are kind of interchangeable to him. And I could tell from how he is that he will have a wonderful life, whoever he's around.
Talia has been called selfish, irresponsible, and delusional. Rana has been called worse.
I got death threats. I got people telling me that I am evil, that I'm worse than Hitler, that I'm human garbage.
Some mothers would say your decision to leave was putting care for yourself ahead of care for your children.
I think that better women make better mothers. When you love and know yourself, then you can be a better mother for your children.
But how are you being a better mother 3,000 miles away?
Because I'm in touch with who I am.
I know, but how is that benefiting them?
It allows me to make choices for my children from my heart rather than from what I think society tells me about what a mother should be.
I've never seen him play his drums.
Oh, really? You haven't?
No, I don't think I have.
You chose to be a mother. Aren't you now just abdicating that responsibility and saying, well, I don't want to sacrifice anything? Shouldn't mothers sacrifice for their children?
I think no mother should have to completely sacrifice. I think to sacrifice your own wants and needs and desires for someone else's life, what kind of a message is that sending your children?
Here's a surprise. Not only is her ex-husband David satisfied with the arrangement,
I think it's been great for the family, from my standpoint.
Talia's son Nathaniel supports his mom despite the distance.
Yeah, it's difficult, but no, I'm not going to grow up hating her and never speaking to her again. I think my mom's a good mom, even from far away.
But for 11-year-old Serena, who was only 8 when her mom left, the emotional toll is palpable.
When I was growing up and my mom lived with us, then I have like a lot of happy memories.
Serena saves every memento from her mother.
These are some Christmas wrappings that I saved. These are like my birthday cards and stuff. They're kind of like special since we don't get to see her a lot.
And she's become a surrogate mother for Eric.
I make Eric's lunch and I feed him breakfast. Sometimes I am actually kind of angry with her that I don't have a mother to do what a mother does.
In her blog, The Better Mothers Project, Talia defends her decision with her message that there is not only one right way to be a mother. Rana agrees. She says she has managed to have it all, an award-winning book and a close relationship with her sons.
I think if I was a man, then none of this would be an issue. People have this idea of what a good mother is. I don't fit that mold, but I definitely fit the mold of a terrific divorced dad.
It's been a while since I've seen your face.
Yeah, it has.
Talia has lived apart from her children for 5 years now. We checked in with Serena just last week. She is 13 years old now and says adjusting to life without mom has become easier.
Our relationship is really a lot closer than it was before. We've talked about like relationship problems and, you know, what's going on in the girl's body and, you know, all that stuff.
On the last day of 8th grade, he's gonna ask her out because that's the first day.
And I just, you know, I really love my mom a lot.
But Serena's vision of her future life as a mother?
As a mom, I never want to be apart from my children. I want to make that perfect family that she was never able to do. I want that really badly now.
Mama loves you. Bye.
So what do you think about these mothers who move out? Let us know on Twitter using the hashtag ABC2020. We'll be right back.
Next, whose side would you be on? The 16-year-old who wants to have her baby, or the parents she says want her to terminate it?
You had talked about trying to slip her some kind of an abortion pill.
It was more of a joking type thing.
So is it worth suing your parents?
He said, our daughter is suing us.
Next on With Parents Like These. 2020 returns. Here's Deborah Roberts.
It's a family feud as big as Texas.
Holy crap.
Two teens in love, their parents in hate,
Get out of here.
their lawyers in court,
But right now it's a victory for life.
and the media in a tizzy.
They told me the allegations were false.
At the center of it all, 16-year-old Reagan. Hers was a typical childhood in Houston's ranch country, horseback riding, volleyball. But things started going south when her parents, Jeff and Denise Cohen, split up.
Was that hard on you?
It was hard on me because, you know, I was so used to seeing them, you know, together in the same house.
During the turbulence, Reagan met Evan Madison on Facebook, a fellow horse lover from a neighboring school.
She is just sweet, kind, just everything I want.
He was just very sweet and a gentleman.
And next thing you know, you're dating.
Yep.
Dating was soon more than holding hands and cuddling.
How quickly did it become sexual?
Probably not until we started dating for like 3 or 4 months.
Were you worried at all about possibly getting pregnant?
I was worried, but I mean, I was on birth control and I quit taking it, and then the moment I quit taking it was whenever
you got pregnant.
A positive pregnancy test said it all.
What was your reaction when you found out she was pregnant?
Shocked. Wasn't expecting me to be 16 and having a baby, that's for sure.
Did you have any opinion about babies and abortion and teen pregnancy?
I would always watch like Teen Mom and stuff.
I feel so
I saw, you know, all those moms that are out there, they can do it with their babies.
At first, the young couple kept the pregnancy a secret, then fessed up to Evan's mom and dad, Jamie and Joey.
I'm the boss, that's how that works.
Were you upset?
It's just kind of like a wow moment. Like, I was going to support the kids. I mean, whatever they decided.
Jamie offered to break the news to Reagan's mom, whose reaction was quite different.
I was like, we're going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of business. And
what did you mean, take care of business?
Basically terminate the pregnancy.
Two moms, two radically different views. Jamie was herself a teen mom.
I mean, I'm definitely not endorsing it. I mean, it requires a lot of dedication and hard work and sacrifice, but it can be done.
Reagan's mom, Denise, admits she had an abortion and wanted her daughter to consider it as an option.
There were accusations that you had talked about trying to slip her some kind of an abortion pill.
It was more of a joking, do you think I could type thing, let somebody else be in the same position and to see what they would say.
Emotions between the two families soon hit a boiling point when Jeff learned his only child was pregnant.
What did you think should happen?
it's a mistake done by kids that obviously don't know what they're doing. We'd sit down and have conversations with her, and yes, they were heated conversations, and I did let her have it. I did absolutely let her have it.
Did you feel you were being pressured?
When my dad stepped in, he stepped in with my mom and said, I don't care, you're gonna get an abortion, and you know, it's my way or the highway, you know, that kind of attitude.
Do you respect her decision?
Honestly, no.
No.
I don't respect her decision.
Things got so ugly that police were called to the Burnside's house as recently as 4 weeks ago.
One location of your emergency? We just have a harassment, verbally harassing. It's my dad.
Jeff Cohen insists he never harassed the Burnsides, and no police reports were ever filed.
Did you threaten her in any way at that moment?
Never. At any point in time, that girl has never been threatened. We wanted to fully understand that she knew what the future held for her.
For Reagan, the future definitely included a baby at any cost.
She asked us to please help her. And, I said, I don't know what I can do, but I'll figure out something.
Jamie and Joey Burnside went into action and found attorneys with the Texas Center for Defense of Life who were ready to go to court.
A lawsuit never would have been filed if her parents had been willing to do the right thing, in our opinion, which is to allow her to make the choice to have the child.
During a meeting at this local restaurant, the attorneys arranged a clandestine plan. With her mom waiting outside in her car, Reagan slipped into the ladies' room with a notary and signed the filing for a temporary restraining order. Eventually, Reagan would legally free herself from her parents. The courts call it emancipation.
But why not sit down and talk it out and try to sort it out? Why go to court?
I felt like it was never going to end.
Today, a civil court judge granted a temporary restraining order.
Her parents were blindsided when a local reporter broke the news to them.
I spoke with the teen's father. He didn't want to go on camera.
He said, our daughter is suing us. Really? She was somewhat nonplussed. And she said, yeah.
In the lawsuit, it says that her parents had done multiple actions: removal of the cell phone, removal from school the previous day, forcing her to get 2 jobs, taking away her car, and other demands because she was refusing to give in to their coercion to have an abortion.
That is inaccurate. The way it was laid out was wrong. We weren't trying to force her or coerce her or what have you. At this stage in the game, at this point, we were working to, make a plan for life.
The teen's father wasn't happy.
The pregnant teen, with the support of her boyfriend.
The case became a national media sensation.
Do you have the determination to be a good father?
And I said, I hope that you're proud that you have sued your parents. I just want to let you know that those attorneys are not going to be there for you. I said they got what they wanted.
Denise and Jeff deny trying to force their daughter to do anything, saying Reagan has been manipulated by media-hungry lawyers. Still, they signed a court order.
Get out of here.
Jeff was clearly unhappy about it.
We've basically had our child ripped away from us through the court system. Parental rights just, you're just done. You're done today.
249.
At nearly 5 months pregnant, we found Reagan shopping for baby clothes. She wasn't working, and Evan had lost his after-school job at a local grocery store.
How do you plan to support yourself? How are you going to care for your baby?
We're, going to try to be very, money-wise. We've actually saved about $300-400.
That won't get you too far.
No. I mean, it's going to be hard.
Perfect.
Weeks later, decked out in cowboy gear, the teenagers formally tied the knot.
We are gathered here today to celebrate this woman in holy matrimony.
Reagan's parents were not invited.
It ripped my heart out. I never, ever thought I could feel that way in my life. That's one of the things that the parents look forward to, just watch them get married. And and be there with them through all the big events of their lives.
And late this week, we went back to Texas to catch up and discovered that another big event had just happened. Reagan and Evan had a falling out with Evan's parents, so they're now actually living with Reagan's mom, the very mom she sued. They're all happily awaiting the baby, due this September. We'll be right back.
Next, does mother know best? Not according to her humiliated kids. When she's planning on trading up her implants.
If she gets them bigger, it'd be like chaos.
What if she died? Does she really care that her kids could be left alone?
Next on With Parents Like These. We return to 2020s with Parents Like These. Here's Deborah Roberts.
Taking a walk with mom is a challenge for Lacey Wild's 17-year-old daughter, Tori.
Uh-oh, she's bouncing.
When people see my mom with large implants, I feel like they judge me. Usually girls just laugh at her, make fun of her. Men just calling out. My life revolves around her boobs.
Every moment, Tori keeps a wary distance.
Bye, guys.
After all, it's not easy living with a mom whose 52-inch assets are on clear display.
It's annoying. I feel like we should have a normal time, walking down the street. I wish she could take them off when we go places together.
Gun shoes.
Lacey Wild is all about living large. Very, very large. Much to the dismay of her son, Brandon.
Everything's fake, I think. I don't think she looks pretty at all. I think she looked pretty before she even had the surgery.
Lacey claims to have the 7th largest breasts in the world, a way to support her family through public appearance fees. But those volleyball-sized implants are the source of bitter conflict between mom and daughter.
People will start booking her, kind of like, when you go see the two-headed man. It's not like they're booking her because, oh wow, she's
Thank you,
sexy.
dear. I just love you saying that.
She's
basically saying I'm the sideshow. I want you guys to play on your iPads, and as soon as I'm done here, we'll go to the park for a little while, okay? All right.
Lacey's work on her website cuts into mom time, according to younger kids Genevieve and Brandon.
She's always busy on the computer, her phone, iPad. She never does anything with us. She's like...
I just got asked to go to the grand opening of a daycare because they want the dads to get involved.
So how much do you think you'll make because of those breasts?
I'm looking to maybe make $250,000 a year. My boobs are my paycheck for sure.
Your boobs are your paycheck?
100%.
It wasn't always this way. Lacey started life as a tomboyish girl next door named Paula.
I was just a flat-chested, brown-haired little girl from a Midwest town. That's the house I grew up in. I slept on the floor, but I don't think I'll ever be that poor again.
Married at 16, divorced with 2 kids by 21, she was scraping by as a waitress when suddenly she had a big idea.
I changed my hair color. I got my breasts done, and my money just started rolling in.
12 breast surgeries later, goodbye Paula, hello Lacey Wild. But being Lacey comes at a cost. She can't even pick up her 5-year-old daughter.
This ain't gonna work. I can't lift her up and pull her to me because, let's be honest, I'm out pretty far. I can't work out, I can't jog.
We used to ride bikes together every night, and we can't do that anymore.
Sleep, too, is a difficult balancing act.
She has to have a pillow on her boob. Yeah, she has to have 3 pillows under her boob.
After a little while, I can't take it anymore. I feel like I'm being suffocated.
She sleeps like this. Like a mummy. She's like...
Lacey's kids endure a much greater hardship every day, the scalding shame of public embarrassment.
My mom was going to drop me off at school, and this kid says, "Your mom has big boobs." That made me feel so crazy. So weird and awkward. Yes.
I do want my kids to be happy and not be embarrassed of me and not be, having to worry about being bullied at school or feel embarrassed at all.
So at home in sunny South Florida, Lacey sometimes goes to great lengths to come off like the mom next door.
Extra large pants, extra large jacket is required for this operation. So look, normal mom, right? In 100-degree weather.
Nice try, but not good enough for 11-year-old Brandon.
I want her to get them smaller, not stay the same or get bigger, and then I would be happy.
Well, get ready, kids, for a new round of zany.
Mind you of anybody?
Lacey's about to double the size of her breasts, going from a triple L to a triple Q.
If she gets them bigger, it'd be like chaos.
They'll be like 42 pounds.
Is it safe?
Absolutely not. These aren't safe. I'm a walking time bomb is what the doctor told me.
The surgery's so risky, no American doctor will do it. Tori is outraged that her mom is willing to take that chance.
What if she died? Is she really taking that into consideration? Does she really care that her kids could be left alone?
But Lacey's fans urge her on, donating for the upcoming procedure in Brazil.
You know, when people put on the internet oh, I'm gonna kill myself or I'm gonna do this, people write on there do it, because they don't really care about you. They just want to see you do something crazy, and then they're done. So you're gonna do it?
Well, I haven't done it yet, so.
No, and that wasn't what I asked.
Your daughter Tori is really upset with you.
She thinks that I'm being irresponsible by putting my life on the line.
You say it's upsetting, I feel bad, I don't want them to be upset, but why do it?
It's the money. It's the money. I need the money.
Money to send Tori to college and care for her 2 younger children.
Come on, though. Well, there are people who are working 2 jobs at a grocery store, at a department store.
I was doing okay, but I've quadrupled my income.
Do you ever regret this?
No, actually, I don't regret it. I would do it again. Absolutely.
Even knowing that your kids are upset and embarrassed?
Don't our parents always embarrass us?
The other day I went to a party and this kid came up and he's like, "Are you Tori?" He's like the one that has the mom with the big boobs. I'm like, "Yep, that's me."
Do you think that this could permanently damage your relationships with your children?
I don't think so. My kids love me for me. I am very loving. My heart's bigger than my boobs.
Next, dozens of drunken teens at a party. Some passed out in the yard.
They say there were beer cans and vomit everywhere.
But when the police came, who got in trouble? The parents inside, who didn't buy a drop of liquor.
The first thing that I remember was a policeman saying that my dad was going to jail.
A mom, a dad, and a gross out party. Next on With Parents Like These.
What's a party without entertainment? Just recently, some R-rated pictures popped up on Facebook of strippers supposedly hired by a mother for her 16-year-old son's birthday. So how does that compare to a high school party with no strippers but lots of drinking? That's more common and potentially more dangerous. But for whom? The kids or their parents?
Prom and graduation season have arrived, and along with the dresses, corsages, caps and gowns, and the parties. Raucous teen bashes that can strike fear in the heart of any parent. Paula and Barry Spencer know the feeling well. For them, last June 16th started out as a day of celebration.
There was a lot of jumping up and down. Yeah, it was amazing.
Their 18-year-old son, Nicky, along with his high school baseball team, had just won the state championship. It was a big day for the small town of Falmouth, Maine.
Nicky asked if he could have a celebration at our home.
I didn't know necessarily what the party would entail, but I mean, it's assumed that people are going to be crazy and pumped up and hyper after a big win.
The Spencers enjoyed entertaining their son's large group of friends, but say they would never cross the line. Like the dad in this what would you do scenario who actually buys alcohol for his teenage son.
You never do a party for the kids?
No, never. I have 4 of them. My oldest is 30. Never. It's the wrong message to send them.
The Spencers say they were definitely looking to avoid sending that message.
What were the ground rules?
He actually told us we'll keep it to 50, and I said nothing illegal.
Those would prove to be famous last words.
Barry came to me and said, I'm starting to see people sneaking in alcohol.
People from other towns started hearing about it, and we started having people show up who I didn't recognize, and kind of got a little out of control.
Around 10:30 p.m., an anonymous tip comes into the Falmouth police that there are more than soft drinks being served at the Spencers' home. Sergeant George Savage was on duty.
When I pulled up to the house, a gentleman came out and identified himself as Mr. Spencer and that he was hosting an alcohol and chemical-free party.
Sergeant Savage leaves, but the partygoers keep arriving.
I saw lots of people coming with just boxes and boxes of beer in the woods.
So when the police first came to your house, you already knew things were getting a little dicey. It was a little more than you can handle.
Yes.
Why aren't you walking through the house saying, time to go home?
I felt like I invited these kids to our home to celebrate, and I didn't have clear evidence that they were all drinking. And I also really felt at the time that if I walked around and said, all right, everybody, we're shutting it down, I thought they'd run to their cars or they'd do something that's more dangerous than what they were actually doing.
So you thought it was safer to let them stay and continue the party at your house?
But not drink.
At 11:30, another Falmouth police officer makes a traffic stop near the house. In the car, he finds one of the passengers is a drunken underage girl who says she has just come from the party. Police make a beeline back to the Spencers.
How had the scene changed?
At this point, now looked like there was a party going on.
Not just a party, a rager that has ballooned to around 100 rowdy kids, openly drinking in the backyard when police descend to break it up.
It was just mayhem. They started breathalyzing any kids that were trying to leave.
The first thing that I remember was a policeman saying that my dad was going to jail.
Going to jail, even though the Spencers didn't provide a drop of the alcohol?
Two parents due in court today.
It's happening to parents all over the country, like this mom who was sentenced to 6 months in a Massachusetts jail for hosting underage drinkers, even though she claims she was duped by duplicitous teens. And this Tennessee school teacher arrested and then fired for the post-prom drinking party she says she unwittingly threw. Denials aside, District Attorney Stephanie Anderson believed the Spencers were the latest example of parents turning a blind eye to tipsy teenagers.
There was no real attempt to prevent underage drinking at that home.
She points to the police report from that night, which describes a scene fit for a frat house, complete with a teenager passed out on a neighbor's lawn.
They described the scene at your house that night as, quote, an animal house. An animal house. They say there were beer cans and vomit everywhere.
It's just not true.
But Anderson didn't buy their story, and she went after the Spencers, charging them with allowing minors to consume alcohol in their home, a crime that now had them facing jail time.
They wanted to be the cool parents.
Q97.9 is Portland's #1 hit music station.
The story quickly got the attention of the local media.
I mean, can you imagine at that moment how you're going to feel? I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get arrested for this.
Wrong. 21 and over, you can drink. 21 and under, you can't drink. It's the law.
A few clicks on YouTube illustrates the ever more devious and dangerous ways kids are finding to get drunk. From eyeball shots to vodka gummy bears to downing hand sanitizer. It may make you wonder whether adult-supervised drinking parties are such a bad idea.
What's more dangerous? Having my kids down in the basement where I know they're going to drink a few beers, or having them go out to the softball field at night and drink where there's nobody to keep an eye on anything?
In this scenario, there's no difference at all. There wasn't anyone there to keep an eye on anything.
But Anderson had a hard time convincing a jury of that.
When it did go to trial, it was split down the middle,
Yes.
6 to 6.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you?
No, not terribly. It's a very divisive issue.
Rather than retry the Spencers, Anderson offered them a deal. No jail time, but they would have to pay $17,000 in fines and restitution, write a letter of apology in the local newspaper, and serve 100 hours of community service each.
You know that there are critics who say that you were overzealous in this, that you have a cause you're promoting.
Well, underage drinking is one of my causes, that's true.
But do you really think you're going to stop underage drinking?
No. I don't think I'm going to stop underage drinking.
So then what have you done? Haven't you chased it back to the unsupervised, unchaperoned location?
Well, I think what this case did was it got the issue out in the open. I think parents are putting themselves in the position of the Spencers and saying, what should I do differently? If I'm going to have a party, I better have chaperones.
We did not intend for kids.
Parents think some of this stuff is cute, and that child, subconsciously or in the future, may not trust his father as much.
The kid takes it in stride, though. Dunk. Falls down, gets right back up.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Check out this dad at a theme park leaving his son unattended in the splash zone. Oh my God! Okay, he's not big enough to get in the water ride, so we'll just park him near where the water will hit him and he'll get kind of the experience. Don't do that to your kids. From the theme park to the ballpark, often the venue for classic dad discombobulation. Look at this guy.
See, he's got a baby in one hand, does he, and the ball in the other?
This dad doesn't even manage to hold on to the kid. His daughter just tumbles out of his lap into the bleachers.
Yeah, the look on her face pretty much tells the story.
Yeah, you idiot. She gave him the death stare, and he deserved it.
Is there something about the hard wiring of the male brain that makes us just slightly less capable in this arena?
I think you're being very kind by saying slightly less capable. I think we're a lot dumber in some of these things. Yes, of course, it's the way that we're hardwired. We're much more rough and tumble. We're not as nurturing.
There really is something about a sporting event that can summon a father's evil side. Look at hockey coach and dad Martin Tremblay during the post-game handshake ceremony. You look back and he scoops his leg. You do realize you're a grown man, right? The 13-year-old he tripped broke his wrist. Tremblay was banned from the league and sent to the grown-up penalty box, jail, for 15 days. I think this peaks the bad dad meter into bad human. Well into bad human at this point. Overall. It gets even darker than that. This surveillance video from a gas station in Detroit at 3 in the morning became a national story. Look closely at who's driving. A 9-year-old girl, her father in the passenger seat.
9 years old.
Yeah, she's 9. She drove us here. It's awesome. I have such a system. Is that camera on?
Listen, we're leaving, and she's driving. I'm drunk.
The surveillance video went viral, and the dad, Sean Weimer, went to court, where he was sentenced to 2 years probation. If you're that stupid, I want you caught on tape. Speaking of punishment, remember this dad? Tommy Jordan made a huge splash, even getting interviewed on 2020, after he decided to take his daughter to task for an anti-parent rant she posted on Facebook.
You know, when your parents tell you to do something, you do it. You don't go, God, fine.
In retaliation, he went Eastwood on her laptop. The only lesson this taught this guy's daughter was dad is a maniac, and I can't wait to move out. Dr. Gardier says this is the exact wrong way to punish your kid.
Good parenting would be all of that time and effort that he spent at making that video, spending that time instead sitting with his daughter, talking with her about her behavior.
Now, we should say not all of the caught-on-tape moments involving dads are negative. Let's wrap this thing up with a clip from a father letting it all go. He has become known as the dancing dad on the internet. I think the dancing technique was spectacular. It served the purpose, and I stand by him 100%. In conclusion, in an era when more moms are working outside the home, more dads are stepping up. But as they do so, our experts say the humiliation doled out by these viral clips should serve as a useful reminder.
So your bottom line message to dads on this Father's Day seems to be, don't be an idiot.
Don't be an idiot. Think about what you're doing. You're allowed to make mistakes, but for heaven's sakes, learn from your mistakes and try to be a better dad.
That's our program for today.
A brilliant scientist and devoted family man.
Eugene was a beautiful person.
He definitely wanted to change the world for the better.
Found viciously beaten to death.
32 lacerations to the face and body.
He had suffered a crushed trachea.
Police uncover a trail of evidence and search for a brutal killer.
The volume of blood told the story of how far the struggle went.
There were numerous items of evidence seized.
Several suspects emerge.
We did receive tips that it was a professional hit.
He was doing work that might have threatened someone enough that they murdered him.
I knew him to be someone who would maybe not want to cross.
Until the case takes a jaw-dropping turn.
And then a bombshell was dropped.
We thought that we were really onto something, and that kind of fell apart.
And the truth is revealed.
You're telling a family that you've arrested the right people.
We were back to square one.
She wasn't telling us all this stuff out of the goodness of her heart.
It just didn't sound like it could be possible.
Norwich is a small city in eastern Connecticut, known as the Rose of New England.
The city of Norwich is an old mill town. It's not as affluent as the rest of Connecticut. There's poverty here. You know, there's hard luck here. But overall, it's a good city. It's one of those places that doesn't change much.
But on the night of May 14th, 2004, Norwich was shaken to its core by a horrible crime.
911. I was coming here to look at an apartment, and there's someone laying on the ground. He's not moving, and he looks like he's dead.
Police and paramedics raced to the scene.
They found a white male in his 50s. There was a lot of blood. It was a horrific scene. And the paramedic indicated that the unresponsive person was deceased. Upon arrival at the scene, we could tell that there was a vicious beating with numerous strikes to the face with some unknown object.
He had suffered quite a lot of injuries to his face and neck. And there was a pattern on his clothing. It looked like it may have been shoe impressions.
It may have been a case of someone either stepping or stomping upon the victim.
The victim's shoes were missing, a wallet, and some other items were missing that he would have normally had.
The missing items suggest a robbery. But what explains the viciousness of the attack?
The volume of blood told the story of how far the struggle went from the side of the house to a car parked in the driveway. The violent struggle had moved throughout the backyard to the location where the body was found. There's always a possibility that it was a random crime, but the manner of death did raise our suspicions about it being possibly more of a personal nature.
The forensic team gets to work.
They collected the blood, hair, fiber, evidence, anything that they could find at the scene.
But this crime scene poses unique challenges for investigators.
The property itself appeared to have been in the process of being cleaned up.
There was a lot of debris. There was broken glass, and there was metal, there was, bike parts.
It was difficult to see if any of that material had anything to do with the crime scene. We did not determine the murder weapon at the scene.
There were numerous items of evidence seized.
We saw a hose in the backyard that had blood on it. A keychain was found at the scene, and a brick with some apparent blood residue. The situation with the house told us that the victim was not residing in the house.
Detectives turned to the 911 caller for a statement.
She said she had seen a for rent sign, and she called the number.
The woman who answered said that her husband, the owner, was at the house.
She says, "Oh yeah, my husband's down there working on the property. We should go talk to him."
So she went to the property and discovered the body in the driveway. She dialed 911 at approximately 10:55 p.m.
Police now believe the victim is the owner of the rental property, New Hampshire resident Eugene Maloff.
I conveyed that information to the New Hampshire police, and they were able to notify Joanne Maloff that we had discovered someone that appeared to be her husband.
I received a call at 2 o'clock in the morning from Joanne. And she said, Eugene's been murdered. And it just didn't sound like it could be possible, like it was a bad dream. It just rocked my world.
"56-year-old Eugene Maloff was born and raised in Norwich.
Eugene and I were very close, all through grade school, high school. We just loved each other's company. He was just a down-to-earth, sensitive, nice guy.
Okay, come on. Let's do our standard dance.
Eugene and his wife Joanne were married young and soon after started a family.
Joanne was made for Eugene. They were both very outgoing and had a lot of warmth. Eugene was always very loving to the kids, just very gregarious and sweet. We knew from a very, very young age that he was a genius.
He got his education from Harvard and then MIT, and he had a doctorate in environmental engineering.
He wrote books about outer space and nuclear energy. There aren't many people like him who can both understand the science and communicate the science.
After completing his PhD, Eugene embraced cold fusion, a controversial theory about limitless energy.
Gene got deeply involved in cold fusion, which was contrary to a lot of conventional thought at the time. If cold fusion realizes its potential, you would have unlimited alternative energy. Gene definitely wanted to change the world for the better.
Gene was trying to follow his dream and go on the path less chosen, and he was working on new ways that we could stop global warming and have a better world.
All right, there we are. But that's our little house.
Eugene always told his parents that he wanted them to keep the house in Norwich. He was sentimental and he just loved those old memories.
Now, the house that held Eugene's fondest memories had become the scene of his family's worst nightmare.
That was the house that he grew up in, and although he moved to New Hampshire, he had kept the family property and had rented it out for years.
Detectives call Eugene's wife, Joanne, and question her about her husband's last known movements.
She said on this particular day, he had come down to clean up the property, making sure that it was all suitable for renters. And he had a dumpster delivered. Joanne Maloff had spoken to her husband earlier that afternoon, and in fact, she had expected he would be home in New Hampshire by 9 o'clock or so that evening.
Police learned that Eugene had driven his minivan to Norwich that day.
She described the van, and it had some unique markings on it, and also had New Hampshire plates. Mrs. Maloff said the van should have been on the property.
But there was no van in the driveway.
The first thing you're thinking of is that the killer had taken off with Mr. Maloff's van.
He's a family man, murdered and brutally beaten. I think that shocks the conscience of any neighborhood.
We felt that whoever was driving that van was complicit with the homicide of Dr. Maloff.
Coming up, investigators uncover conflicting evidence.
They had been involved in a theft of a motor vehicle and some kind of violent struggle.
Blood was sent to the laboratory, but there was no match. It wasn't logical.
And disturbing secrets.
I realized that there were people out there that weren't happy with Gene.
Whose blood is that and where did it come from?
He wanted to commit suicide and was shaking and hyperventilating.
Some of the things regarding her whereabouts on the night of the murder hadn't added up.
I had to accept it, but it was a terrible thing.
Nuclear scientist Eugene Maloff has been found violently beaten to death at the rental property he owns. And police suspect the killer fled in his van.
We put out a bolo, be on the lookout to all the local police departments for the van.
While detectives wait for news on the van, they interview neighbors.
The purpose of the neighborhood canvas to try and figure out when was the last time Mr. Maloff was seen alive.
We spoke to a neighborhood friend of Dr. Maloff. He indicated that he had seen him mowing the lawn earlier that day, and nothing was suspicious at the time. He did indicate that at about 8:30 p.m. that evening, the van was not there, which gave us a time frame to start working with.
Dr. Maloff had been mowing the lawn. Everything had grass cuttings covering it, from abandoned bicycles and debris on the ground, but there wasn't a stitch of grass on these keys. So we believe that those keys were dropped after Dr. Maloff had mowed the lawn, which would have been sometime around the time of the homicide.
Detectives hope neighbors can help them identify the owner of the keys. But then, police receive an urgent call from a local casino.
We were notified that Dr. Maloff's van had been located in the employee parking lot of the Foxwoods Casino, which was approximately 7 miles away from the crime scene. When we arrived, the tailpipe was cold as if it had been there for several hours. The van was towed back to the City of Norwich Public Works Garage so that the State Police Major Crime Unit could process the van.
They searched the van for hairs, fibers, and anything that looked like blood.
They didn't obtain any fingerprints from the door handles or steering wheel, which indicated to us that the driver quite possibly was wearing gloves.
Investigators hope security footage will help them identify the driver of Eugene's van.
It was a hazy, foggy evening, and we weren't able to gather much evidence at all from the cameras at the Foxwoods Casino.
With the killer still at large, police turn their attention to Eugene's wife, Joanne, in New Hampshire.
Probably a 3-hour drive from New Hampshire to the crime scene. The Maloff family, they had alibis, and they were not suspects at this time. Joanne Maloff couldn't provide anybody's name that would have any intention of hurting her husband.
Police asked Joanne for information about recent tenants at Eugene's rental property in Norwich.
We needed to obtain the identity of all individuals that lived in the house. They were definitely persons of interest. Joanne Maloff told us that Gene had evicted Pat and Roy Anderson approximately 2 weeks prior to the murder.
Gene's tenants stopped paying the rent, and Eugene eventually had to look into how to get them out, because I think they were there for a good 6 months before they actually left. Gene didn't want to be cruel to people, and I think he really gave them a lot of leeway, but enough is enough.
For detectives, it's the first break in the investigation.
Pat and Roy Anderson had been living at Mr. Maloff's property for a long period of time, up till the eviction.
My immediate questions were, where are the people that were evicted? How do we locate the Andersons?
Luckily, a tip from a neighbor leads police to the Andersons' son, Chad Schaefer, who lives nearby with his girlfriend, Candace Foster.
One of the investigators went to their apartment to get information about Chad's mom and dad, Pat and Roy.
The purpose of his interview was to determine whether or not the Andersons had seen Gene Maloff on the property, if they had seen him, when they had last seen him.
Chad claims that his parents had not seen Eugene since he served them the eviction notice.
Chad Schaefer said there were no hard feelings between the Andersons and Gene Maloff.
Police asked Chad for his whereabouts on the night of the murder.
Chad and Candace indicated that they were both home with their newborn on the night in question, and that was their alibi.
Chad cooperates with police and provides them with his parents' new address.
I subsequently went out to Pat and Roy Anderson's new rental out in Montville, Connecticut, and interviewed them about Jean's death. Pat Anderson, she corroborated Chad Schaefer's assessment that when they were evicted, they moved on and there was no feelings of animosity between themselves and Jean Malov.
Detectives still want to know where the Andersons were at the time of the murder.
Patricia Anderson worked in a nursing home. Ian said she was at home after working previously during the day.
Police ask Roy point blank if he has an alibi around the time that Eugene was murdered.
He indicated that he had worked from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the morning out at the Foxwoods Casino. And Dr. Malov's van had been located in the employee parking lot of the Foxwoods Casino.
That was very suspicious to the investigator. From the crime scene to the Foxwoods Casino parking lot, it's not far, a 15-minute drive. And then you're thinking maybe this eviction thing was a personal thing. And you have as investigators to figure out who did it so that person can be held accountable.
Police investigating the murder of cold fusion scientist Eugene Malov now have their first real suspect. His recently evicted tenant, Roy Anderson, works at the same casino where Eugene's stolen van was found on the night of the murder.
Roy reported that there was no animosity about the eviction. There was no problem between Eugene and Roy. But Dr. Malov's van had been found at the Foxwoods lot.
Angered by the eviction, had Roy killed Eugene in revenge?
We got a list of names of employees that night, and we verified that Roy Anderson was in fact working from 5 p.m. until 1 a.m., and that provided him with a pretty solid alibi that he was not within the city of Norwich at all. Pat and Roy Anderson were both individuals of interest, but they had alibis.
Police want to know if anyone else was living in their house at the time of the eviction.
One of the things that we learned in talking to Pat and Roy, they would bring other people in to help pay for rooms.
We needed to obtain the location of all individuals that lived in the house.
It turns out one of the Anderson's subletters is well known to police.
Lenny Campbell was a friend of Roy's, and they allowed Lenny to stay in the basement of the house.
I personally had run into him a few times during the course of my patrol duties. I knew him to be an individual that someone would maybe not want to cross. The Andersons, when they were evicted, Lenny moved out with them to their new place.
Police want to speak to Lenny, but the Andersons say he recently packed up and left without an explanation.
He moved out shortly after Eugene's murder, and investigators thought it was suspicious.
When police try to track Lenny down, they find he's moved out of state.
Lenny Campbell was working on a farm up in Massachusetts. Lenny denied ever even having contact with Eugene Malov.
Lenny isn't talking, and there's no evidence connecting him to the crime scene.
At this point in the investigation, we really need some solid forensic evidence that somebody was complicit in the murder of Eugene Malov.
Police receive the autopsy report, and it sheds more light on how Eugene was killed.
The medical examiner's office indicated approximately 32 lacerations to the face and body.
And he had suffered a crushed trachea.
What possibly could have sparked such a vicious assault?
We did receive tips throughout the course of the investigation saying that it was a professional hit.
Was Eugene assassinated for his research into alternative energy?
I thought that perhaps because cold fusion was so controversial, that maybe it was some kind of planned setup?
I do believe there's always a danger to somebody that's going to rock the boat. I realized that Gene's passion for countering big oil meant that there were plenty of people out there that weren't happy with Gene.
It occurred to me that, he was doing work that might have threatened someone enough that they would have murdered him.
We delved into it, and based on the crime scene and the circumstances in which he was killed, I don't think a professional hitman would go about his business in that manner. It just didn't add up. It wasn't logical.
Police are running out of leads, but then a witness comes forward with a bizarre account from the night of the murder.
We came in contact with a shuttle driver for a nearby hotel sometime between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. on the night of the murder. He had pulled up to a traffic light and saw a van similar to the doctor's van, and he noticed the operator of the van, a white male, was wearing socks on his hands.
Obviously, you start to think, well, if the person's wearing socks on their hands, they don't want to transfer any evidence onto a steering wheel.
Whoever was driving that van with hands covered with socks was possibly complicit with the homicide. Gene Maloff's van had been moved into a fenced-in compound, and we examined it again for anything that we may have missed or the state police may have missed, and we seized a few items to include a plastic bag.
Police submit the bag to the state forensic lab for analysis.
And as a result of that, a fingerprint came back. It was the first piece of evidence that would place somebody in that van, possibly on the night of the murder.
The print is run through the police database.
The fingerprint belonged to a local individual from the Norwich area.
When we ran this person's record, they had a record of burglaries.
He was the type of guy that wouldn't have any problems breaking into your car. Maybe Eugene Maloff got killed for it.
Police have a fresh lead in the murder of Eugene Maloff. A fingerprint on a plastic bag found in the scientist's stolen van is matched to a local car burglar.
The results of that examination indicated that a print on the bag belonged to a Nicholas Gardner.
Police track the suspect down and bring him in for questioning.
He was very nonchalant about the fact that he had broken into the van, but when it was brought to his attention that that vehicle was used following a homicide, his demeanor shifted dramatically, and he became very nervous at that point.
When police grill him further, he makes a startling admission.
He said that he broke into a police impound lot.
He explained that he had broken into the impound lot and was burglarizing the cars. And that would explain how his fingerprints had been found in Mr. Maloff's van.
Police confirm his story when his prints are found on other vehicles in the lot.
Nicholas was definitely wrong place, wrong time, and had no clue that the van that he was entering was involved in the homicide of Gene Maloff.
Nicholas is charged with the burglaries, but it's a dead end in the search for Eugene's killer. Then, police get a call that reignites the case.
We received a phone call from the New Britain Police Department, 40 minutes away from the city of Norwich. A New Britain police officer had come in contact with two subjects. They were in a parking lot. They were asleep in the vehicle. It was a stolen vehicle. It had been reported stolen the same night of Dr. Maloff's murder.
When the officer looked inside the car, he made an alarming discovery.
They had been found with blood inside their vehicle. And so obviously the first inclination is, whose blood is that and where did it come from?
The men are arrested and taken to the station.
When they were taken into custody, they were identified as Joseph Riley and Gary McAvoy. Officers at the scene observed that Riley and McAvoy had evidence of some kind of violent struggle.
Is it possible these two men were involved in Eugene's murder?
We wanted to either rule them into our homicide scene or rule them out.
So investigators from Norwich went up and spoke with Riley and McAvoy at the lockup in New Britain.
Police interview Riley and McAvoy in separate rooms. They press Riley about the bloodstains in the car and scratches on his arms and legs.
Joe Riley told the detectives that he and McAvoy ended up in an altercation with one another.
They both said that they got into a fight in the car, and that's how they had the blood in the car.
Investigators questioned the pair about Eugene's homicide.
During Riley's interview, he made some statements that really caught our attention. He asked, did the old man get the kicked out of him? But the manner of death of Gene Maloff had not been relayed to Riley at that time.
How did Riley seem to know details about how Eugene was killed? McAvoy's response to questioning raises more red flags.
When the officer advised him that he was being investigated for a potential homicide, Gary McAvoy became very distraught. He indicated that he wanted to commit suicide and at one point curled up in a fetal position on the floor and was shaking and hyperventilating.
The statements provided by Riley and McAvoy were suspicious to the investigators.
Police bring in the hotel shuttle driver who claimed he saw someone driving Eugene's van on the night of the murder.
He told us that the operator of the van was a white male.
A photo array was offered to the witness, and he pointed out to Joseph Riley as the driver of the minivan that he saw that night.
Police now have a witness placing one of their suspects inside Eugene Maloff's van on the night he was murdered.
Riley and McAvoy had been involved in a theft of a motor vehicle and a burglary, and they did have evidence of violent struggle, and the witness picks Riley out of a photo lineup.
Police still lack physical evidence, so they obtain the men's DNA to compare to samples collected from the crime scene and the van.
Evidence was sent up to the Connecticut State Police Forensic Laboratory.
When results come back, it's a major break.
We received a phone call from the forensic lab saying that the hair in Mr. Maloff's van was a match to Mr. McAvoy. Okay, well, that's a blockbuster.
We had solid forensic evidence, and we're going to move forward with a warrant.
Riley and McAvoy are charged with Eugene's murder.
I was happy for the family that maybe they'd get some closure on this case.
But then, investigators received a disturbing call.
We thought we were on strong footing based on the solid forensic evidence from the van, and the case was going to move forward. And then a bombshell was dropped.
Joseph Riley and Gary McAvoy are charged for the murder of Eugene Maloff after one of McAvoy's hairs is matched to a hair found in Eugene's van. But then, police receive news that rocks the case.
Bombshell was dropped by the state forensic lab. The lab reached out to us and said there was a mistake, and that McAvoy's hair was not at the crime scene and were not in the van.
There was a clerical error at the laboratory.
And somewhere at the lab, there was confusion over the item numbers. So the hair fiber they tested, they thought came from the van, in fact, came from the hair of the suspects up in prison. And as a result, the state of Connecticut decided they were not going to pursue homicide charges against Riley or McAvoy.
We thought that we were really onto something, and that kind of fell apart.
At this point, we were back to square one.
You're telling a family who lost a loved one to violent crime that you've arrested the right people. And that falls apart, and then we say to the Maloff family, I'm sorry, we couldn't do better.
I had to accept it, but it was a terrible thing. I would cry on the way to work, and I think when you go through a tragedy, your world becomes very small. Joanne was very upset, and I saw her break down once when we were going someplace. I was following her, and she lost her way. She just was devastated at that point.
When the investigation went on so long, I had a feeling it was just one of those random events, and we would never learn anything more of it. I think I pretty much accepted that.
The case goes cold. Then, 4 years after the murder of Eugene Maloff, the investigation is rebooted. Determined to solve the crime, Norwich PD assigned new resources to the case.
They put a task force together, and I was assigned to work with the state's attorney's office, along with Detective Terry McFadden.
Detective Curtis and I picked up on the case and basically started from day one.
Cold cases are just cases that take longer to solve than others. It was a fresh start, and it let us get to work on finding out who the real killers were.
We had met with the Maloff family and just told them that we were trying to get justice for Eugene, and we were able to secure a reward for information about Mr. Maloff's homicide, and that's not typically seen in every homicide.
The reward is advertised on a large billboard near the interstate.
We worked with the family, and we came up with the best design possible and put a billboard up where we thought that the most people would see Eugene's face and see our message to the public saying we needed help with this investigation.
After just a few weeks, the billboard starts to bring results.
The day I won't forget in this case is when we had a witness come into the police department and explain to me that they had direct information related to the death of Eugene Maloff.
The witness claims to know Candace Foster and Chad Schaefer. Chad is the son of the Andersons, the tenants Eugene evicted.
Jill Sebastian was friends with Candace Foster and Chad Schaefer, and had actually lived with them around that time of Mr. Maloff's murder. She began to tell us about how when they would see reports about Mr. Maloff's murder on the TV, Chad would start getting kind of antsy. And Candace had mentioned to Jill about Chad coming home with bloody clothing around the time of Mr. Maloff's murder.
Investigators are stunned by Jill's statement, but police have no evidence connecting Chad Schaefer to the crime scene.
Early in the investigation, an investigator went to Chad and Candace. They said that on the night of the murder, they had stayed home and there was no evidence to support any connection to Eugene's death.
Police are eager to corroborate Jill's story. Her boyfriend, Keyshawn, agrees to give a statement.
Keyshawn told us that Chad Schaefer confessed to Keyshawn that he had killed Eugene Maloff.
Obviously, it's a significant development in the case. We started to look at Candace Foster and Chad more closely.
Police learned that in the years after the murder, Chad and Candace had separated. They focused their attention on Candace.
The number one goal for us was to get information from her regarding Chad, being a participant in the murder of Dr. Eugene Maloff.
Police urge Candace to tell them everything she knows.
This is the father of her children that she's now going to be telling us about that participated in a homicide. Candace and Chad had a tumultuous relationship, and she related to us that her biggest fear for her and her children was Chad.
Detectives asked Candace about a piece of physical evidence that could tie Chad to the crime scene.
Candace told us that those keys had been hanging inside the loft at the apartment where Candace and Chad lived, and we happened to find a key ring similar at the crime scene.
The information is damning. but investigators suspect that Candace is hiding something.
Some of the things that Candace had said regarding Chad or regarding her whereabouts on the night of the murder hadn't added up. We had to let Candace know that she would have to come clean and explain to us everything she knew about the murder.
When we interviewed her, a little bit of information would come out, and then a little bit more information would come out. And then it reached a point where Candace did tell us someone other than Chad was involved in Mr. Maloff's murder.
Detectives believe Eugene Maloff was killed by his former tenant's son, Chad Schaefer. But Chad's ex-girlfriend, Candace, claims Chad wasn't the only one involved in the brutal murder.
Candace told us that Moselle Brown, he had been at the scene with Chad at the time of Mr. Maloff's murder. Moselle Brown was the cousin of Chad Schaefer.
Chad had been hanging around with Moselle a little bit more often around this time. Moselle Brown had a violent criminal past. We knew of him. We were cautious of him.
Investigators press Candace for more details about events leading up to Eugene's murder. She says it all started when a relative saw Eugene cleaning out the rental unit the Andersons had been evicted from.
Candace told us that all day long, Chad had been getting phone calls from his mom, Patricia Anderson, saying that the landlord was throwing all their things in the garbage. Patricia was really upset and starts putting out pressure on Chad. I told you, you were supposed to get that stuff out of there. You were supposed to have that house cleaned out. I want my belongings. And Chad had gotten picked up by Moselle Brown.
He told Moselle that Mr. Maloff was throwing stuff out that belonged to Chad's parents. They get upset.
And they go over there and they say, listen, we're not going to take it from this guy. And Mr. Maloff says, no, get out of here. I gave you plenty of time to get your stuff out of here, leave. And someone throws a punch. They hit him once, and now once they hit him, these guys don't stop. They just start beating him. And they leave him for dead.
Following the vicious assault, the pair returned to Chad and Candace's apartment.
Candace told us that they returned. And Chad was upset, and Chad had blood on his clothing. And Chad explained to Candace that they had beaten the landlord.
But Candace's account doesn't explain how Eugene's van ended up in the casino parking lot.
Candace wasn't telling us all this stuff out of the goodness of her heart. She was doing this to minimize her involvement and minimize her punishment.
When investigators confront her about her deception, she finally cracks.
From what Candace was telling us, it looked like three of them were involved. Chad Schaefer, Moselle Brown, and Candace Foster.
Candace says she returned to the rental property with Chad and Moselle to cover up their crime.
Candace said they walked down the path to the garage to where they saw Eugene Maloff laying on the ground, and that he was still alive and still breathing, but he was severely beaten. And they realized they gotta kill him.
Candace Foster was a bit reluctant to do that, at which point they threatened her.
Chad and Moselle said if she didn't participate, that she'd be next.
Vicious beating with numerous strikes to the face with some unknown object.
And at that point, Eugene's still alive. And that's when Moselle steps on his throat until he stops breathing.
After killing Eugene, Chad, Moselle, and Candace staged the scene to throw police off their trail.
They wanted to make this look like it was a robbery, and part of that was that Candace drove the van and dropped it off in the casino parking lot.
With Candace's story, investigators believe they have enough evidence to charge Chad and Moselle with murder. They arrest Chad Schaefer first.
When the news came through that they actually had an arrest, it was a shock to find out that Gene was killed by a son of a disgruntled tenant. It just seemed unfair.
When investigators track down Moselle Brown, they find out he's serving time in Ohio for another crime.
We extradited him back to Connecticut to face charges for the killing of Eugene Maloff. I believe the X factor was Moselle. He was the violent ringleader, and I believe Chad Schaefer and Candace Foster would not have killed Eugene Maloff in the absence of Moselle.
The three accused are tried separately.
Moselle received more than 50 years in prison. At Chad's trial, he was defiant and ultimately took a plea deal and took the offer that the state put on the table.
Chad Schaefer agrees to plead guilty to first-degree manslaughter.
Chad Schaefer received a 25-year sentence, and he would have to serve 17.5 years.
Candace Foster is the last to face justice.
There's no way that we could have had as strong a case that we did against Moselle and Chad without Candace. And Candace, with her attorney, made an arrangement with the state's attorney's office for her to receive the sentence that she got.
Candace eventually was charged with hindering prosecution and tampering with evidence.
She served 3 years in jail and then several years of probation.
The verdicts bring closure, but nothing can replace what Gene's loved ones have lost.
I'm not a good judge as to whether justice was served, but the bottom line was that we couldn't bring back that special, wonderful man.
I think Gene would like to be remembered as somebody that advanced the deeper knowledge of the universe.
I think Gene did make a difference in the world. I think he could have made a much bigger difference had he been around longer.
I just miss Gene, and I really relish all the memories I have of all the happy times. We all loved him so much. The world has lost a great human being, a great mind, and a beautiful person.